Peter Pan, Chapter 17, Battle at Marooner's Rock.
Are you ready for battle, my boys?
Shouted Peter with great excitement. From various parts of the lagoon, the boys answered,
Aye, aye! We'll get those pirates!
And the battle was on. The boys fought bravely against Smee and Starkey, forcing them out of their boat and into the water. Heads bobbed up and down. It was a close fight. At last, the boys captured the boat, and the two pirates swam away. Fearless as they were, none of the boys wanted to fight Captain Hook, who was in the water too. They had promised Peter that Captain Hook would be his, but they also trembled at the thought of Hook's iron claw. It was at this battle, on Marooner's Rock, that Peter and Hook would finally meet face to face. Hook pulled himself up on the rock to take a breath. Peter climbed up the other side. Because the rock was slippery, they had to crawl on their knees, keeping their heads down. Neither knew the other was coming. As they both reached for a grip on the slippery rock, their hands suddenly touched. Their heads popped up, and Hook and Peter were nose to nose. Quickly, Peter grabbed the knife from Hook's belt. But before he struck his foe, Peter noticed that he was on the highest part of the rock. It seemed very unfair. So instead of stabbing Hook right away, Peter extended his hand to help Hook up so they would both be on equal footing. But rather than taking Peter's hand, Hook bit it. Outraged, Peter stood motionless. He was in shock. People remember the first time life is unfair to them. Though they may forgive the unfairness, they are never quite the same after. But not Peter. He had met unfairness before, but he always forgot. Perhaps this was the real difference between Peter and other boys who grow older. While Peter stood there, stunned, Hook's iron hand clawed him several times. Peter was badly wounded. During the battle, the lost boys lost track of Wendy and Peter. After a while, they saw Hook in the water swimming away as fast as he could. Behind him was the crocodile, in pursuit of his favorite food. The boys decided to make their way back home. Occasionally, they shouted,
Peter! Wendy!
But they expected no answer. They were sure that Peter and Wendy had already made it back home. Left behind, Wendy had swum around the lagoon on her own and was now worn out. With his last bit of strength, Peter pulled her up onto Marooner's Rock. They both lay there, tired and weak and unable to speak. The tide was coming in. Finally, Peter said,
Look, the water is rising.
Wendy did not understand, so Peter tried to explain.
You're too weak to swim or fly home, and I am badly wounded. Soon the water will cover this rock.
You mean we are going to drown?
She asked weakly.
Unless we find a way to leave this rock.
He answered. As they clung to each other, Peter searched the water for something that might keep them afloat. Floating by was Starkey's hat. Quickly, Peter grabbed it, but it was too small to be of much help. Nevertheless, he placed it on his head. Then, suddenly, something very light brushed against Peter. It was the tail of a kite that was flying high above. Michael had made it some days ago, and it had blown away.
Look, it's Michael's kite,
said Peter.
It might be able to carry you home.
Peter grabbed hold of it. With new energy, he tied the string of the kite around Wendy's waist.
What about you?
Asked Wendy.
You must tie it around yourself, too.
This kite isn't big enough. It will only lift one person,
replied Peter.
I won't go without you,
said Wendy. But with his last bit of strength, Peter had already pushed her from the rock. In seconds, she was in the air and almost out of sight.
Little Fox.